Missy's sitting on the wrong side of the,
No, she usually sits over
yeah,
here.
what are you sitting on the wrong side for? Yeah. Well, see that, you did.
Ah,
There he
that
is.
guy.
Here's
I
one.
found him. Yeah. I don't
Where's
know
the
where
other?
the other one is. I thought it was
Probably.
Jason's turn to babysit him.
That's about a minute fast.
Yeah, it's a
apparently,
minute
so-
past.
Oh, a minute past.
Okay, so you have 2
Okay.
minutes now.
Mine says upstairs.
We are.
So you've got 1 minute. Did you hear me say that?
I didn't hear anything.
You have 1 minute.
I didn't hear anything. He's coming up the stairs.
He's downstairs.
He's coming up the stairs.
We're starting on time.
Yeah.
All right, everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, please remain rise for our invocation as soon as I find it. I just had it written here. We seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. Thank you. Amen. I never know if it's an amen or if it's a thank you. All right. Let's take a roll call real quick. I'm gonna start.
Here. Jim Adderholt, here.
Jane Plummer.
Megan Heil.
Scott Safford.
Lori Wolf.
Daniel Hughes.
I did a little bit out of order. We're going to turn it over to town attorney to swear everyone in now.
Absolutely. The following items on the agenda are going to be quasi-judicial in nature. If you're going to testify or present any evidence, please stand and be sworn.
That's it.
Anyone who's going to speak. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
I do need to put on record that I believe Tim is an excused absence from last meeting.
I do recall him saying he wouldn't be able to make it, yes. That's
All
correct.
right. First up on our agenda is to approve the LPA regular minutes. We have another set of minutes sitting here. Do we need to approve those two as well?
I don't think so. I think the council approves those, but if you have comments or changes to that, we can forward those along if it's clarifying something you stated. That was the joint meeting that we're talking about that were handed out to you. So yes, if you have any things that are
I
majorly
would
different.
prefer we don't
That's
try
fine.
to approve those minutes. Rather have an opportunity to review them,
Okay, that's fine.
all right?
So yeah, however you want to do that, but I think they're looking for your feedback if there's anything major and change on the joint minute side.
All right, then we'll give a few minutes a little later to everyone review them. If you have comments, then we'll hit them at the end of the meeting. Does that work?
I'll move to approve the September 17th minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving along, we're going to open the public hearing for 90 Ibis Street screen enclosure setback variance.
Sure.
Yeah.
At this time, it would be appropriate for any of you all to disclose ex parte communications you may have had on this particular item.
Dan?
None.
Site visit.
Google Maps.
None.
Google Maps.
Site visit.
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. The applicant, White Aluminum, is seeking a setback variance on behalf of owners of 90 Ibis Street, the Urbeck Trust. The variance request is for the residential pool and screen enclosure, 7.5-foot side setback, and the front setback found in section 34-1174 D1C and B, to allow a pool and screen enclosure 2 feet from the side property line and slightly forward of the house, but still 25 feet from the right-of-way. The applicant needs to expand the pool deck in order to allow wheelchair accessibility around the pool. The deck expansion would be permitted by right, however, the screen enclosure expansion requires a variance. Staff received several phone calls. All callers have indicated they have no concerns with the request. Staff recommends the LPA recommend approval of the request, and the applicant is also available to speak.
The applicant like to speak? Nope. Nope. You have to go up and please state your name for the record. A little closer so we can
So
get.
my name is Karen Brewer. My mother is Annette Urbeck. She lives at 90 Ibias. She's 82. She's had 2 hip replacements, 2 knee replacements, back fusion. So the pool therapy helps her when she is down here. So I think it would be great if we could do that for her. That would be a wonderful. She has problems getting in because there's not enough concrete in the back. So if we could have the access for her to get into the pool, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Add. Okay, any questions of the applicant or the town?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I was at the site
You can come
yesterday,
back up.
and it's a very small pool, obviously, because it's a small area to work within, and I can understand wanting to widen it, but there is a planter at the end.
Planter will come out.
Okay, that's
Sure. Yes, the
Okay.
planter's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to move the forward in front of the house as well?
I'm
Or
not
just
su-
to the side?
I believe towards the back, like the planter will be gone, and then she will be able to come through the back to get in. Because now when you walk back, there's nothing back there. It's just tiny. And it is such a small pool anyway. I mean,
Correct.
if you could see it, it's very tiny.
Yes, it is.
But I know my brother told me that the planter will be totally gone, so she can get in easier, and then if she could have access on the other side, it would help her.
Okay. So you're going to go on the side towards the tennis court, you're widening it there,
Correct,
and that's
yeah.
the only change in
Yeah.
the footprint?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
My concern then is the ladder to exit the pool is at the opposite end where there is absolutely no space. And, you certainly couldn't get a wheelchair there.
Right. She only uses the stairs to get in right now.
Okay, not the
okay?
ladder.
Not the ladder. And
Okay.
that big, ugly thing that contains plants will be gone and give more access for her to get in the water.
Okay, and where are the stairs located? I didn't see them.
Oh,
I
they're
thought
right
the
there
ladder.
below the plants. You've got two.
So how can you get to the steps?
Well, you'll move, I'm sure they're going to reconstruct that whole pool, take out that end, and make it so she can get in. They might even put steps that go down for her to get in the pool.
I guess,
Okay, so
are you trying to ask if the apron is being extended on the side that the steps are on? I think it's where you're going with that.
It's
Yeah.
it's essentially, because I don't see access being improved by moving the one wall.
See, and I don't know that, I don't know the whole, does anyone else here? I don't know the construction plans. I wish I knew more about that.
Page 12 in your packet is the site plan that was submitted. And I was told by White Aluminum that the expansion was occurring closest to the tennis courts. So that would be on the southwest side. That is what I've been told, is that was where the expansion was occurring that needed the variance. I did ask about the front, if the front was being expanded, and they indicated that no, but they are requesting a variance because currently the screen enclosure is slightly in front of the house. So I have included that as part of the variance request. But they indicated that they didn't need to expand it further forward because I had the same concerns.
Just for future, it would be great if the surveys could be done on the paper so that they're the largest instead of the smallest, because this is really, really hard to read. I mean, if it's
And
turned,
mine turns this way, so
Oh,
I
This
don't.
is how we got it.
ours is teensy-tiny, we can't read it without a magnifying glass.
That's really strange, since I printed mine from there and it did this direction, so I'm not sure how it,
We all have glasses, too.
Even with them, I can't remember.
I can't read them.
we'll try to make sure that it turns the correct direction. I'm not sure why it would have
Thank
done
you,
that
I
for you guys.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's just a comment.
So if I summarize it right, the front is not being expanded in front of the house. It's only on the tennis court side that we're expanding. And on the tennis court side is where these stairs are located, that you have to expand it?
Yes, they're on, the tennis court side is here, and the stairs, there's a bush here or a tree, and then the stairs are right there. here's the square. So it is on that side. It's not on the gate side. It's right there on the tennis court side.
Okay, so the side that you're asking to be expanded is where the stairs are, so you can get the wheelchair
Yes,
around.
yes, that's what
Okay.
we're trying to do, yes. So she can get in from,
Does that clarify the bud?
Well, I guess, because it's, at this point, if the stairs are on that side, there is no access to them because,
Ends?
in any direction,
That's because
Which
they're going to
doesn't make
remove the
sense.
planter.
because of the planter.
Well, it's going to be gone.
yes.
According to our
Yeah,
plan
they're-
here, it says
yeah.
it's gone too.
Yeah.
And they would be able to expand the deck towards the water without requesting a variance. So that may be occurring, but they didn't have to request a variance for that part of it, so they could be expanding back.
Other questions for the applicant or the town?
Yeah, I just have a question. When was the existing cage constructed?
I know that the hurricane hit it a couple years ago, but that came with the house. That is the same cage that when she bought the house, whenever. She's been down here, I think, 11 years.
Was that permitted?
That, I don't know. That, I think they said that the cage was with the house, so.
Yeah, it came with the house when she bought it, and then the hurricane a couple years ago did a little bit of damage to it, but the screen came with the house when she purchased it.
But it does appear to meet the setbacks other than that slight bump out to the front, but it is within the 25-foot setback. So it does meet all of the other setbacks as it currently exists.
We'll open it up for any public comment. Right here to speak? You can go ahead and sit down. You sit down, thank you. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Would you like to discuss any more or make a motion?
Well, I would move approval of, excuse me. See the reference here, a variance 201-90052 for the 5.5-foot variance from the residential pool and screen enclosure. And allow a screen enclosure 2 feet from the side property line. And to continue to allow the front of the screen enclosure to contain less than a foot forward of the front lot line.
Because it meets the
All
findings and conclusions.
Of course.
Of course. I'll second that.
There's a condition in there too, if you see that.
That screen pool enclosures of the same type and location may be permitted as a replacement if damaged,
Correct.
with that condition.
I'll
Page
second it.
11. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Excuse me.
Passes 6-0. Thank you. Moving along, we're going to open the public hearing for public CPD minor amendment. Get to that page. First up is the town. Good morning. Name for record.
You hear me now? Okay. Kalyani Butara with Community Development Services, case DCI 2019-0023. The applicant, Public Supermarket, located at 4791 Esther Boulevard, is seeking amendment to CPD to previously approved resolution 9811, which was previously amended in 2001 to allow additional sign and off-site sign, and in 2014 to allow temporary sign for emergency event hours. This amendment to CPD requests addition of 1,514 square feet of packaged liquor store for consumption off premises. Existing supermarket is approximately 28,000 square feet, and the applicant is requesting to increase the maximum square feet to 32,117.1 square feet approximately within the commercial plant development, and modify the schedule of uses to add packaged liquor store of 1,514 square feet. Also, the applicant is requesting a deviation from LDC provision that prohibits liquor store within the 500 feet of radius from residential areas. And the applicant and the agent is here if you have any questions.
At this time, has anybody had any ex parte communications on this?
Sorry. what?
Any ex parte communications?
Yes, I visited the site and met with, I asked for the manager and 6 guys showed up. They were all men. One of them decided that he was the head manager.
Did you
And
decide that day? I'm just kidding.
Daryl, I don't know his last name, but anyway, we reviewed the site.
Okay.
Site visit.
Site visit about 5 times a week.
Site visit.
Drive-through.
Site visit.
Okay.
And just for the council, or go ahead.
Staff recommends approval with additional conditions, which are given on page 52 through page 54, I guess. Yes.
There's some modifications and an additional condition, just for the record.
Anyone here from Morning, Adrienne Noto on behalf of the applicant with Green Spoon Motor. Our office is at 600 Brickell Avenue, Miami. Publix currently operates, as Kelly explained, an existing grocery store at 4791 Estero Boulevard, and we are here today seeking approval to amend the existing CPD to add a 1,514 square foot liquor store, and we're also seeking the deviation as the proposed liquor store will be located within 500 feet of residences. And as you may know, the applicant's one of the biggest supermarket chains in the country, and they have over 200 liquor stores, and they're continuing to expand. The applicant in this case did engage a traffic engineer to analyze the traffic and the parking impacts, and the traffic engineer did determine that the impacts are insignificant from the traffic engineering standpoint. The applicant is in agreement with all the conditions contained in the draft resolution, and we're here for any questions.
Questions? I'm going to start down here.
Sure. Is there anybody here from the local Publix?
There is
today?
not today. We were going to have them come for the council meeting, but we do not have anybody here today from Publix.
Are you aware?
Local, did you say?
Yes.
They didn't even know there was a hearing today
Okay.
and had no specific knowledge of any of the details of this. I had to show them the drawing. That's where it was going to be.
Their corporate office handles all of these applications. They have real estate departments. It all comes out of their Lakeland office, so it doesn't really come to the local department yet. But we will have somebody here if you need somebody from corporate for the council hearing, but we don't have anybody here today. They are in agreement with all the conditions.
Was there any research done as to when this was originally built? Was there any discussion of liquor issues at that time? We have a number of council members who may have been around at that time, but just was curious if you looked into the history of when this was originally proposed.
To my knowledge, they came to us when the idea was proposed, so it's relatively new. It's a relatively new concept with the liquor stores and their grocery store concept. So to my knowledge, from when we originally got this application and reached out to the town, it was the beginning of the year that we've been going through this process to get this approval. They wait to get the approval first before they actually go into, the permitting and the phase.
Well, my question was when the Publix was originally built on the island, was there any conversation at that time with the city leaders or the town leaders at that time about hard liquor being sold at that premise? And was there any conversation about that as you looked or as you did your research?
I can address that if I may.
Please.
I was on the LPA when it came to the LPA, and we approved it on the LPA level. There was no request at that time for liquor. It being extremely controversial at that time, whether there was some sentiment on the council that there should even be a moratorium on all commercial. One council member, if you notice from the exhibit of the when it was approved, when it went from the LPA to town council, Ted Fitzsimons, who was shown as being absent, not voting. What in fact happened was he was so incensed he got up and left the meeting. And as a result of that, that's why I'm here today. I got appointed to his position. Okay. And I was I was mayor when they approved the sign thing. I think the reason that they didn't request, well, they may have had some internal financial or economic reasons, but but it was so very, very controversial at the time, and I think the feeling was that if they added to the commercial aspect of it a liquor store, it might have been a very negative thing in the community. So that's my recollection of what happened there. It was very, very. The town was very split at that time about the commercial versus residential property, and this being, within that comp plan provision of the 500 feet from the residential. And
Thank you. Very helpful. A couple additional questions. It looks as if this addition will add about 1,514 additional square feet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What impact will that have on the existing store? Do you know? In other words, will all the beer and wine be moved to the new facility? And will that open up additional space in the existing space?
No, to my knowledge, Publix still operates the beer and wine. They have a 2 APS in the supermarket, and then the liquor store is separate, and they will have a separate liquor license, which is a 3 PS liquor license, which only permits package sales consumption off the premises.
So they'll continue to sell beer and wine inside the grocery store as well?
Correct.
So
To my
they'll have-
knowledge, yes.
Okay, so they'll have no impact on what's inside the store currently?
Correct.
And will beer and wine also be sold in the liquor store as well then?
I believe so,
Or just
yes.
hard liquor?
No, it will be a package liquor store, beer, wine, and liquor. Again, all for consumption off the premises.
Seemed like an odd question, but how is the Publix doing here on the island?
We haven't heard that they're not doing well, so I believe they're doing well. I mean, they're proposing the liquor store, which would be, to me, indicative that they are doing well.
Does the liquor store add value then to Publix? In other words, would that make it less likely to close because the additional business that would be generated by the liquor store, since it's our only grocery store on the island? I was curious if that's part of your argument. It might help its economic model or its economic case by opening this package store. Is that a fair characterization?
I'm sure it will. It derives, I'm sure people from the existing Publix also go there, shop there, they make additional revenue from there, but there are people who are just seeking a package store, and they will go to Publix. It's a convenience to have the grocery store there as well, but it will bring in additional customers aside from those who currently just go to Publix. So yes, I believe it will help the economics.
Just to ask my other question again, that's the model for Publix. When they have a package store, they'll continue to sell beer and wine in the store, and they'll have the separate store on the outside?
To my knowledge, yes, every Publix that I've been to that has a neighboring liquor store, the existing supermarket will not change.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Considering the fact that we lost one other grocery store and a liquor store in that plaza, and soon, January 5th, the liquor store at the north end, 2 liquor stores at the north end will also be gone. I think it's somewhat important to have these services on the island to save trips off the island, which I think is a huge benefit for the town. And we do have 1 liquor store at the south end of the island that will benefit from the 2 others going out. But I do think that it is important to have services on the island instead of making extra trips off. I do look at the map and see that 7 parking spaces will be removed. Do you feel, does the town feel that we still have enough parking there? And is it of your opinion that most people would be shopping in the grocery store and, one-stop shopping, grocery store and liquor store, so we don't need extra spaces?
Applicant has provided a traffic study, and according to the traffic study, they have 30 extra parking spaces, even though the 7 spaces are removed.
Great, that's what I wanted to hear.
So just to continue on, yes, I think I've heard conversation that there's a little bit of concern over the peak hours. And what does that do during peak hours? I think it's a small store to begin with, so everybody's shopping at the same time. And is that during season or off season? Probably during season. Yes, there's some of that, but I think you see a lot of that at any of the stores anyway. But yeah, we want to make sure that the design of it doesn't impact the flow of traffic. It's a tight spot as it is, space as it is. But I think the number of spaces meets the code. It's just peak hours. It's a little bit challenging for function.
I recall the the desire to have an 8-foot opaque landscaping within 1 year. And as I recall, I mean, I drove through there and there's like a 6-foot wall with a 6-foot fence on top of it. And so I'm trying to figure out where the opaque wall needs to be.
So the landscaping is on the outside of that wall.
On the other side.
On the other side. So what it is it's a fencing and a wall, which is basically a retaining wall for the parking lot because it's elevated. And then it drops down on the other side at the bottom of that retaining wall is a stormwater system. We've added a condition about that because there's concerns with some recent flooding that's been reported greater than in past years in the neighborhood behind it. Whether that's because they've added mulch and upgraded that. That landscaping has grown in pretty heavy, but the landscape berm is right on the property line is what it looks like. So we've added the condition that they've got to do some maintenance out there and update that and make sure that it's functioning and have us work with them to evaluate if maybe over time you add mulch,
Right.
it grows.
Right.
The berm grows.
Right.
The plants get bigger, the root systems get bigger. We want to make sure it's not encroaching and causing potential flooding problems.
Okay, let me ask one more question about the landscaping. Does the parking lot end for Tops where this line is, and then the rest of it is Marina? Or is that all considered Public's parking lot? Does Publix own the whole thing?
Marina
Okay,
is the separate
I was going to
parcel.
say the inside fence in the Marina area could use added landscaping, but that's not this parcel's business.
No, but we'll take a look at that, and some of that may be tied to the stormwater.
Right.
Because again, I believe that they outfall altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point, if Publix steps up and does a good job and maintains and brings it up and fixes maybe some riprap and some other things that might be causing a problem, but then downstream, the neighboring
It's up
property
on the-
doesn't
Yeah, it's up,
fix anything, then it
it's
doesn't
up on the
work.
6-foot wall that the bushes look like
Okay.
they're not very healthy.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, that wall was a major issue in the original public hearing, for what it's worth.
That internal wall that goes
Y-
between
yeah,
Publix and the snow.
Right, particularly by the neighbors to the south. And it was very controversial, and there was I believe they insisted there be an opening somewhere where where people that live to the south can egress the south end of the bayside end of the parking lot and go into that residential area there. But it being an opaque wall and so forth was a very controversial and important issue at the original hearing, for what that's worth.
Thank you. Scott, do you have any
Yeah,
questions for?
I actually have a couple things. On page 111, your traffic survey, I see your start date was July 17th. I don't think we're really worried about traffic on July 17th. I think we're worried about traffic on February 17th to March 17th. Also on page 103, when exactly is these numbers, where do these come from? Is this July? Is this annual? Is this?
So I know with the traffic study that the numbers are based on a traffic manual that is based on the use, and they do take counts and trips, and that's where they generate the chart from. I don't know the actual date from the traffic engineer as to when the counts were created, but I know that the peak hour trips and the trip generation is all based on a count it's called the ITE manual that all the traffic engineers use. And based on his count and the traffic study and the entire analysis, they determined that the impacts for this proposed liquor store would be insignificant from a traffic engineering standpoint.
So on page 103, where do these numbers come from? Is this during peak season? Is this off-season?
The ITE manual, I guess, I don't want to say normalizes, it incorporates both. So it's a book that's put out for typical uses have this much of a count.
We're not typical.
Yeah, we're not typical.
No,
So
but they take for, I understand that. It's a national book that takes for seasonality in all places, and then that's why they followed up with the actual study. I
Because
think
I'm
they have to
thinking,
answer the question.
I'm thinking our island, we need like a delta, because our average consumer during February, March is not your average person. I mean, they're going to the liquor store 3 times as much as you're on vacation.
So what I
So
would,
I'm,
well, I can't answer the question for you, but what I would suggest is the IT.
and I'm not trying to be funny, I'm trying,
No, I know, I get it.
live
It's the truth.
4 blocks from there.
The IT manual is the starting point of all the discussions. It's generally used for zoning purposes. We also obviously have a site here with transportation trips that are occurring. I can't, maybe they can answer the question, but I think your question is, did you take into seasonality on the traffic study? If they haven't, then maybe they can provide that.
Yeah, because I think not only, I would like to see those numbers in March, and I'd also like to see some kind of delta for, our island goes from 6,000 inhabitants to close to 60,000 during spring break. So traffic is a big issue. And to just say especially with those 2 other liquor stores going out of business, one's actually moving, but there's going to be a greater demand for it. And there is, I agree with Jane, there's a need, but I think the traffic's going to be more than you're thinking it's going to be.
We can confer with the traffic engineer who did this study and bring up the 2 issues that you brought up and see if any of those issues would affect what is currently in this traffic report and whether there's any difference or whether the finding is still that it's insignificant.
The other thing,
That's not an issue.
I think where Jim was going with his question is that store is small. It's real small. And to go along with Jane's need, we need a pharmacy on this island. So, I mean, there's one CVS. That CVS doesn't take Blue Cross Blue Shield anymore. So it's really a half of pharmacy. So I would like to have seen someone from this local store, because my ask would be, if you're going to have beer and wine in that liquor store, why don't you take that section out and put a small pharmacy in there?
Definitely something we can address with corporate and the real estate office in Lakeland after this hearing and, express the need for the pharmacy.
I think,
But I think that's outside the scope of today.
But
right, but
we can bring up the concern, but yes, we are here on the liquor store today.
still like to see if you're going to take the beer out,
I agree.
let's replace it.
But
There's a great space where Tops used to be, that the second Publix would be great.
Okay. Lori, do you have anything?
Yeah, on page 51, it mentions the Sandcastle Kindergarten. I did not drive all the way back to Snookbite. Is that operational right now, Sandcastle Kindergarten?
Never seen it.
Sandcastle is,
Town?
I tried to ask 2-3 staff in our office about that, and it looks like it's not there anymore, and it's indicated for the kayaking school or something.
isn't Sandcastle behind behind the public school? It's back there, it's a history center.
I've not seen anything there. I mean,
There
even
is-
upstairs now is a boat sales upstairs at Snook.
It's the marina right now.
Yeah, it's
It
all
currently
marina
uses the
usage.
marina.
I believe the Sandcastle was moved behind the school, and it's used by the historian groups, and they sell jams and, like sea grape
Right,
jam
it's
and
no longer a
books
real
and stuff like that.
kindergarten. Right.
Which then begs the question of how accurate is the survey then?
Once again, it's turned sideways, so you can't read it.
I have another question. What is, assuming everything gets passed through the town, what is your start date and completion date?
So they do wait for this approval. It'll go through the 2 council hearings, then it'll go into the drawing phase and the actual developing the plans, and then once the plans are developed, they will submit for the building permit. So I don't know the exact timeline for how long it will take them to have the plans drawn and obtain the building permit.
Jason, if it goes through us, how soon does it go to council?
I believe the next,
October, November.
yeah, the next
in
date in the
December
packet was
for a second
October
reading.
7th.
It won't be constructed by season, no way.
Oh,
Maybe
no.
next season.
No.
So there is time to redo this traffic study during season.
Yeah.
It's a concern
Hey,
of mine
so-
too.
I will talk to the,
really
I
am
will
concerned
talk about
I just
traffic
want
engineer.
from a
You-
technical standpoint, you generally don't always do the traffic study in the season. I understand they project the numbers and increase it based on local traffic areas, so that they're able to do that. they're able to get something that shows maybe perhaps more reflective of the island and our Southwest Lee County.
But it's not fair to
By the
come up
next
here and
meeting.
say it's insignificant if it's not done. And seven of us are sitting here concerned about that number, and the traffic is already horrendous here on the island. Now we're sending a whole bunch more traffic to south on the island because we're losing two up front. I don't think it's insignificant, and I don't like, I would like to see something that is a little bit more accurate to what's going on here on the island. I just,
So
we all got this gut feeling this isn't a right number.
I understand that. And so they can reformulate and make sure that that's more accurate to our specific region, our area. What I would say is also during the site plan modification, so when they come in for their actual DO before their permit, they have to submit a revised traffic study to update that. So that'll be something that they could also do. That's about in line with the season.
And if there's a concern in this, does the process stop, or do they come back in front of us? At that point in time, it's already been through all of us. It's been through to get that order. I mean, that's my concern, is at that point in time, it's not out in the public.
Generally, in my experience, well, traffic's an interesting thing because is it a judgeable thing? It's the number, right? It's either you meet a concurrency level or you don't, unfortunately. It's not these 3 trips make it unmanageable. I think that there's a threshold that we could set as far as if it ends up being 10% more, 20% more, whatever that number is, that triggers some reevaluation or consideration. That's something that we could consider, absolutely.
Okay.
Excuse me. And a traffic study today would not be accurate either, because anybody who wants to turn prior to Publix has to go down and come back to get there.
No, they fixed it.
No, it's open.
It's open now.
It's open.
But even still, you do bring up a good point.
Open
but by
today.
Then, by
But I
season,
mean,
though,
side
that,
streets are not all
Right.
open.
but by season, though, that should be past Publix and should be a more accurate account of that turn lane.
Let's hope so.
Well,
We'll talk to the traffic engineer after this
thank
meeting.
you.
Council, is there a way to ask for a pharmacy in the conditions?
No.
Okay.
So
I mean,
within our
you
scope.
certainly can, as I think indicated, the item before you is whether or not to approve or make a recommendation of approval or denial for the addition of package store sales as part of their CDP that was previously approved. And you can impose conditions related to that. Certainly, you can ask them to look into that, as I think you already have, but can't be a condition of approval.
So, John, correct me if I'm wrong, they could also recommend allowing that use as an addition to the schedule of uses, potentially.
That is also true. I mean, I would defer, not to go back and forth, but, the existing use is for a grocery store and associated retail use. I again, defer to Jason whether or not within that category, pharmacy is included. But if pharmacy is listed or provided as a separate independent use by the town, then yes, you could, at this point in time, even though it's not being requested, put that in as an allowable use that would facilitate that future use moving forward if that's the decision that Publix corporate makes to pursue that.
In the Exhibit A, which is the proposed ordinance, schedule of uses refers to essential services and essential service facilities group. Jason, could you expand on that for us?
Yeah, those are not anything they do. Those essentially are defined by the code as utilities and things of that nature. So if you've got a power station, lift station, those sorts of things, they essentially fall under that. It's the food
The
service.
pharmacy wouldn't fall into that.
No, sir.
You're talking about the routine utilities and that sort of.
Right, the ability to place those, or if
Okay.
FPL comes in. What you're looking at, and John's correct, the retail, we think that the pharmacy falls under retail. I'll wait. Good ringtone. We think pharmacy falls under retail, but if you wanted to include that in some languages, believing that it's included, or you think the retail should also include pharmacy if they decided to do that, then I think that would help with the record to make, in case there's a code change later on or something else. But pharmacy specifically, I don't believe is any use that I've seen called out.
Well, and here in our special uses, it says food store group one only supermarket. So, I mean, you're pretty limited in your usages here. So it feels like we would have to add, if we want to open the door for them to have a smoother path to pharmacy.
For the existing uses, we just added packaged liquor store. The 5 top uses were approved in 1998, so they are not new.
Well, no, we were just saying that that seems pretty specific, that if we wanted to open a door for a pharmacy, it would be an add-on.
So I believe that, because we don't have it here, that group 1 is a Lee County language that I think they actually still use. So to that point, I think modifying that, if you wanted to make a recommendation, modifying that to include pharmacies, I think that would be.
If these are Lee County usages, and we are sitting here modifying the usages, why haven't we put this into our own terminology to match the usages up with what they're doing and bringing this more in line of what our town code is now? I'm just asking the question. I mean, because you're saying this is a Lee County code.
It's always a judgment of how much to modify and change the language to confuse the issue. So yes, it's a valid point. Didn't want to muddy the waters as far as the liquor store conversation, frankly.
This is pretty muddy.
Well, in defense of staff, what originally came before them was purely an application for adding the packaged liquor store, and so they weren't anticipating. But we can change that. I mean, if it is the desire of this body to recommend to the town council adding that, then what I would suggest is in Exhibit A of the draft ordinance, which is on page 44, where it does say food store, comma, group 1 only supermarket, we can strike out group 1 only supermarket and say food store including but not limited to pharmacy, to include pharmacy use.
And that would not change this, but just add pharmacy as a usage to it.
Correct. It would clarify that as staff has indicated, that pharmacy is included within the food store, but for clarification purposes, that it would specifically state that, because that is the intent of this body to do so and make that recommendation to the town council.
And I want to piggyback on that. Again, anytime that use is added, if they decided to, they would also have to update a traffic study and to include that use and modify those square footages, and all that would have to be done. And we generally handle that specific part of it at the DO side. And they're trying to provide you a snapshot from the zoning purpose of what the uses generally generate.
I don't disagree with what's being proposed here or what Scott's saying, but I think we're whistling Dixie. The decision on what's going to go in that store is done at a corporate level, and they've looked. I mean, if they felt there was any economic or reason for a pharmacy, they'd be asking for it.
Madam Chair, on that point, Dan, just respectfully, I wonder, since no one's here locally and the lawyer respectfully is here from Miami, they may be unaware of our pharmacy challenges on our island, and I would support the language that Scott just talked about to send a positive message to corporate, to encourage them to explore that, particularly since if they're going to sell beer and wine in the new package store, it seems duplicative then to sell it inside the store, and it would free up space for a potential pharmacy. And I've got to think the demand's going to be pretty strong from a profitability standpoint for the corporate to take a look at that, and I would respectfully ask you to have them examine that. And then obviously this language would send a positive message as well that we would be supportive, or at least supportive, in exploring that opportunity as well. So I support adding that on to the proposed language. Thank you.
I support it too, but I'm just saying it's a decision that's going to be made. It's going to be made in Miami, wherever.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Lakeland. Lori, do you have anything?
What's left? I see it as a positive for Publix for sure to increase revenue and therefore secure their position on our island, and we won't be losing them with that. But, yeah, the pharmacy would be.
Dan?
I have nothing further except, and these remarks will be totally irrelevant to the issues at hand. And that is, I said, how much is a bottle of bourbon going to cost?
But better bourbon.
And they have very good prices at the Publix in Summerlin that has the liquor store attached to the grocery store, Summerlin and San Carlos. And he said, he pointed out that the pricing on Fort Myers Beach is different than the pricing of other stores.
Yes,
And I said, well, us local people are well aware of that, that your prices here are higher than the Summerlin store, for example. And he said, well, that'll be true on the booze, too, but it'll be cheaper than Santini. So, okay.
There you go.
Now that, just a little information here, but I don't think it has any bearing on the issue at hand. But.
I have a couple of things. On the survey here, and it, now that we've cleared up the sandcastle, my concern is the Newton Park. It's never mentioned if it's within 500 feet of this property or not. It's right across the street and down a little bit. The other concern I have is that, there's a reason why we have that provision in here that this cannot be within 500 feet of a park. It's in. Was that even measured? I mean, has anybody looked at that? How close is Newton Park to this? The other concern I have is, again, one of the reasons why you have that is you don't want liquor store near schools for kids, and you don't necessarily want it near parks for the same reason, but also we've got another issue of people grabbing it, walking across the street to the park and drinking out in the park. I just want to know how close that park is to it.
That's a
It's
good
not
point,
mentioned.
'cause
It's not mentioned anywhere in here.
And that park didn't exist when the original zoning was granted.
Staff can answer that. It's, the measurement of the 500 feet is, I believe, from the proposed front door of the liquor
not
store,
the property
and
line.
the park is outside of that 500 feet. But again, it's before you through the CPD process as a means to deviate from that. So I get your point, but the park, schools, the residences, they all fall under the same category. So if it was within 500 feet, it would, and that was the only thing within 500 feet, it's still, same process would be
I
before you.
get that, but we also need to take that up as a concern here.
But according to the map, I think that's the property appraiser map, if you could comment.
The
Cal.
distance survey on page number 56.
Oh, 56. There was a dotted line in the park outside of that. It is landscape oriented this time, though.
Not really.
Okay, so just barely, but it is
Yes.
outside.
But it is a relevant point of conversation of the proximity, correct? To your point, I think it doesn't need a deviation from the park, but it's within proximity for your consideration.
And Scott covered my parking issues and
Again,
traffic issues, so
we will address that with the traffic engineer after this hearing.
that's all from me too as well. Any other questions?
Before we lose our witness, Madam Chair, would you respectfully ask, when you go before the council, when you have the more local public officials or the corporate folks with you, would you, again, respectfully ask them to address the economic model of a pharmacy on the island, just their business case?
Pharmacy or liquor store?
Pharmacy.
Okay.
And just have them explain the pros and cons from a business model standpoint to the council, so they at least could have a sense as to whether that's even a feasible concept or not.
Ask them on that. I know right now the liquor store is what the studies have been done, so I don't know it by the time of an October 7th hearing whether the economics of that
I don't know
particular
that we can
store.
ask that.
Yeah, and again, this is only for the
the liquor
proposed liquor store.
It's just a general comment about the feasibility of pharmacies in general for publics and what determinations they make, just so we could have a better sense as to how they approach that business model.
We have the liquor store to consider here on top, and that we need to stick to the liquor
I
store. I get what you're saying, but we
absolutely hear
can't-
you, Madam
You
Chair.
can't hold one to the other.
It's a ask respectfully to comment on that as an aside based upon the LPA hearing.
We can ask, express the need of the council for a pharmacy on the island and, discuss that with them aside from this application, but we can address, that is a concern of the town and the need for the pharmacy.
Appreciate your time. I'm going to open up the public comment. Anyone here to speak? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Any more discussion amongst the LPA members?
I think it's significant that there's no public comment because
I find it really hard to believe there's no public comment.
Ocean Harbor people were, I'm surprised there's not one person from Ocean Harbor here. They were.
There's not many people here on the island right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a highly transient seasonal place. I do love the fact that when I looked at this, that how many boat condos they had to send notices to. Was there about 200 boat condos? Yeah. Is there any other discussion amongst us?
I'm with you on this Newton Park thing. I think it's going to be a new hangout.
And it is of concern, but it is outside the 500 feet, which is what our ordinance says it can't be within. So it's kind of a moot point, but it does need to be, it is of concern to me, especially with, some of the other issues that happens in there where I walk every morning and I see it.
Yeah, I walk by there every morning too.
And that is of concern, having that liquor store that close to that park. I grab it, I walk across the street, and I pass out on a bench. I mean,
Don't laugh. It's
the truth.
I mean, I can't tell you how many beer cans I've picked up on my morning walk.
And that's just
Even
beer.
even in off season. I mean, even Turtle Time people have a problem walking by that park. They don't feel safe. And I don't think this is going to help. It's just something that's happening now, and I honestly think it could make the situation worse.
Maybe we need more security at our parks.
They want that as a condition.
Oh,
Well, no, but that's not,
that's-
that isn't in their parameters, but the point is if you don't feel safe going to your park now, then we need security at your park so that you feel safe to go there.
technically, their responsibility ends at the property line.
Absolutely, I'm speaking to the town.
Well, it's, to be considered. Any other discussion? Anybody would like to make a motion?
Well, I have a question. Would the motion be either to approve or not approve the proposed ordinance? This is a little different format that we've been presented with here
No, sir.
today.
No, because the ordinance still has to be drafted, and I think there were some edits that we need to make. It was just to give you a starting point.
Yeah, well, the issue is, or the vote is to forward the application to the town council with a recommendation of approval. If there are any additional conditions or modifications to the draft ordinance or to your recommendation above and beyond what's in the staff report and recommended by staff, it would be appropriate at this point in time for you all to discuss whatever those conditions are and include them in your recommendation for obviously approval or denial. Not to belabor the point, but if you obviously recommend denial, then any additional conditions or even those of staff really are essentially mooted. But you have the staff report, and I would direct your attention to page 49, 50, 51, and not but at least 52 are the criteria. If you believe all those criteria have been met, then certainly a recommendation of approval would be in order. If you do not believe that they've been met, then recommendation of denial. And then again, to the extent that you're recommending approval, if there's any additional conditions that you believe are appropriate to ameliorate or to mitigate the impacts that this project may have, then those would be in order as well.
Point, then what can we do? You know, there is some concern here on this board about Newton Park. Can we is there anything we can do to maybe alleviate our concerns, mitigate our concerns on this one inside the draft ordinance, inside the draft variance, sorry?
You know, hours of operation.
We just expanded them.
I'm sorry?
Didn't we just expand them in here?
Well,
1 hour
I mean,
earlier
again,
than-
that's.
The 1 hour increase,
You know,
they moved the
Delivery.
truck up 1 hour in the
delivery
morning.
piece, yes.
But I'm talking about the hours of operation potentially of the alcoholic cells, which is what you're, you know, recommending approval. If that's, you know, do they run concurrent with the store? Do you say, you know, on the weekends they close earlier? Those are the types of things that may address your concerns without, I guess, a little bit more concrete discussion with the you know, at the LPA levels to what the concerns are. Is then we can work on, is it just it's close to the park, you know, and again, not to belabor the point, but then that goes potentially to the criteria in the code that's in the staff report that you may want to look at and see if it's being met.
Well, I mean, the code says 500 feet, and this is outside of 500 feet, but it's still, just because it's 502 feet, doesn't,
Understood. And
you know, it's not,
and you
change
know,
the circumstances.
again, I'm not suggesting one way or the other what your vote should be, but if that's a concern, then that would go to you know, some of the criteria, the review criteria.
But I'm just asking if there is something or something that we've done in the past to help to you know, address this and other variances, other special exceptions, everything else that we've divvied out here that maybe we could piggyback off of in our draft. If there's not, then there's not, but I'm just asking the question. Because I think that we've got a couple people of concern here of that park, and that's a public safety concern.
Again, I'm not disagreeing, and that then potentially goes to the criteria and the code that you need to be reviewing and evaluating this proposal against and making a determination whether or not that criteria has been met by the applicant.
So,
You know,
let's expand upon that, because not to have publics have a heart attack here, but the reality is it is a request for uses. It is defining their zoning district for
Yes.
this site. All of that is open. It may meet the criteria for the 500 feet. That doesn't mean that that zoning district with those uses are necessarily appropriate in that location, right? That's a general conversation that we have every time, so.
I think that the other piece to this too is we've been told numerous times that they're coming in front of us and asking for something from us. Meaning, and this has been stated by the town manager and other folks, that they're coming in here asking for something that's outside their usage. And we do then have the ability to put something in there to also protect us. And that's been told to us as a board time and time again. So again, this isn't outside of what I'm asking, and that's why I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but I'm
And I
just
think in our
asking.
short time, my short time here, time and hours of operation seem to be a common condition when we think about restaurants and live music and late night alcohol outside and effect on residential uses. That seems to be a tool that the town uses to try to control some of that. I can't answer the hours of operation for the liquor store, but
On this hours of operation, if I may, Mr. Chairman, it makes reference to this store. That section of the ordinance doesn't separate the liquor store from the other store. So when you're talking about this store, it's a combined deal. And so I'm just thinking out loud here. Is it conceivable that they could sell off that liquor store if they just find it's not very profitable or whatever? And would that be possible under this zoning? And they could have different hours than the regular store.
so staff's interpretation of this would be condition 7 limits and maybe we need to modify that language, but what's the time limits of operation for the store and I would say the uses that are incidental with it. So, but to your point, that could be either made more clear that all businesses within the property are limited to these hours, or you can make the liquor store a different set of hours if you wanted it to close at 9.
The problem with that would be is these people, you know, they, I don't know what they do at the other stores, but I imagine the hours are contemporaneously with the liquor store and the grocery store. And they have shifts and staffs and so forth. We're getting again in an economic thing and trying to dictate to
Well, the additional challenge, of course, is even if the package store is closed, they still sell beer and wine at the regular grocery store. So that helps us on the hard liquor side, but doesn't help us on the beer and wine side. Yeah.
If the case is, as pointed out, they're going to continue.
I think what's disappointing is that there's nobody here from Publix. This is a significant ask on behalf of Publix, and there's no one here from Publix to hear, who's local, who could hear the concerns of the LPA today. And I appreciate the council being here from Miami, but it is a little bit disappointing because I think some of these issues could be addressed in between the time that they heard from us and before they go for council. So I think it is disappointing that nobody's here from Publix to hear these concerns, not only about the park, but about the pharmacy.
This is not a small ask.
Well, I agree with you, but from my conversation with the local store people, they're not into the.
Well, no, I don't blame them.
Picture at all.
I blame corporate for not looping
Right.
them in and involving them in this process.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have an area manager that knows exactly what's going on. It's probably in this region right now that could be here. I mean, but that's public's call, not our call. Jane, you had something? She's been trying to get in, so Jane?
I think the appropriate thing would be on what you're trying to bring up about the parks would be for the person who represents this case, when it comes back to the town council, is to express the concerns of the LPA, because it's
Being
not.
waved at.
Pardon me? Louder. I think the concerns could be brought up by the person representing this case from the LPA at the town council meeting when it goes forward about our concerns about the park and the idea of opening up the conversation and putting the use in for the pharmacy, which, I think could be, we have one member of the town council here. She certainly has heard our discussion, and by having that also be put into the record by the town council, or at the town council meeting by an LPA member, would certainly help clear that up.
I think the other issue that we had discussed too is the traffic side. Again, we're not normal, and I know you guys are going by the book, but there's got to be some contingencies for our island and in season. And
The type of buyer.
I will, provide this additional information for considerations. If you all, at any point, whether it's this application or any other application that comes before you, you don't feel that you have enough information available to you to make an informed decision and recommendation to the town council, you can continue the matter and ask the applicant to, bring a local representative, the area manager, whatever it is, to address your concerns so you all can make an informed recommendation moving forward. I've heard a number of you say that this is an important request. This is a big request, and if you all don't feel comfortable in making a recommendation based upon the information that you have available, because you have additional concerns and questions that haven't been answered by the applicant through no fault of council, then that is also your prerogative, your ability to say, you know what, let's continue this for a month and get additional information and see if someone from corporate can come and answer some of the concerns and questions that you have.
I'm all for that. I'd like to see a local rep here. I'd like to, I just find it hard to believe that no one from those condos are here.
Do I need to
I
open
mean,
it back?
I have a
Time out
hard,
here. Do I
so,
need to
so
open it back?
let me finish if I may, Madam Chair. This is a big deal for that area. I mean, you've got the park there. There's going to be an impact on those people around there, I have a hard time making a decision with the information provided right now.
It's not a matter of opening the public hearing, but I believe that, I don't want to speak for council, but she may be coming to the podium or to say, we agree to
Well, that's
a
what I'm
1 month
asking. Am I
continuance. Yes, you can,
Okay.
yes.
My only comment, like I said, we'll talk to the traffic engineer. I will call him on our drive back to Miami to discuss the traffic concerns. The only basis that I would say is this application is for, like we said, it's only for the liquor store, and completely understanding the questions regarding and the inquiries regarding the pharmacy, this is only specifically relating to the liquor store. So I would just request that this not be based on the pharmacy issues that were brought up. But again, we will address this with corporate and express the need for it. And, you know, that's a corporate decision. I can't make that decision, but we will call the traffic engineer and discuss the concerns and see if there is any difference in the traffic study and the way that the traffic engineers compute these and the counts, et cetera.
I don't think anyone is making their decision based off of the pharmacy or not. What we're actually asking is if we can add it in there and make it a little easier on you guys to come through
Understanding.
as additional usage. I don't think anybody is making a decision based off of whether or not a pharmacy is in here or not. They've expressed their interest for it, and in return, we're looking at this and potentially adding it as a usage here. So to make it, that if you
Understood.
guys decide one day to bless our town with another pharmacy, it's a little easier on you.
Understood.
That's what we're, so the pharmacy
Just
is-
wanted to clarify
is
that.
not-
Yeah, it's not all or nothing.
No, the
It's-
pharmacy is just, we're talking about adding it as a usage while we got this case open and making it a little easier
Understood.
should you guys decide to.
Understood.
And if I may, if there's a tradition of Publix putting in these stores near parks, not necessarily within the 500 feet, and if Publix has done something creative in the past to help assist with these kind of challenges, and they have some ideas, we would be open to those as well.
We will also ask that too.
Thank you, I appreciate your comments. More discussion? Dan, I just want to take a kind of consensus. What would you like to do? Would you like to push this forward, or do you want to make a motion?
Well, I think you articulated well as you just responded to the petitioner there, that we're not making it a condition of approval that there be a pharmacy. We're adding it to the uses, and therefore, hopefully, corporate will take a look at it. I can tell you, though, we keep talking about local people. They have no idea. They hardly even knew this was happening, okay? And so it's still going to be people from Miami. And not, when we talk about local people that give input, it won't be local people, it'll be Miami. And so there, the issue then is to get these people from Miami here and hear our concerns and educate them on what our needs are in this community. Because I don't think I think I've made my point.
I think the other point you're bringing up too, and maybe you're talking to Miami thing, but also of this list of 1,000 people that were notified,
Yeah, nobody.
10% here maybe, something of that sort. Who knows what that number is?
Yeah.
And hence we have no comment, no nothing. And this is a big deal for that whole area.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
No, but, excuse me. The notifications go out to where they get their mail, and if they aren't here, they forward their mail if they're not here for 6 months. So they get the notification, and people do write in on other cases and do call in. And so, like on the last case, they had several callers that called that were neighbors. So I think that they're not viewing it as an issue, or we would hear it.
Any emails or?
Kelly told me no, there was no emails response.
You see, I struggle with that, with a list this size, that no one's could yay or nay on this either at the same time. And then this goes
you did.
for
I'm
us,
sorry,
goes through
Sarah's
town council, and it's done.
Sarah's
before
going to
they show
correct
up.
me on one of those.
I received one phone call. I don't know where the person lived exactly. They did ask me about it. It was a day when Kelly and Jason weren't in. I just let them know what was going on, and they said they thought it was a good idea. But I don't know specifically where they lived.
I'd
I
hate.
mean, believe me, we keep waiting for,
I know.
but there's been probably more people noticed with this one than almost any other one, too.
But again, this will be done, at this pace, this will be done by December before anybody's really even back here to know it happened. Then there's a liquor store in their front yard and severe traffic congestion or something of that sort, and they're going to go, how'd this happen? I just, yeah, I
So,
kind of,
I don't
it's
want
a
to.
big deal.
I don't want to argue the point. I don't want to
I know.
argue for one side or the other. I just want to make one technical point that the traffic study really is related to the liquor store. Let's
Yes.
remember that because the store is there. So the peak season of that, just take that into your weight, whatever it's worth.
But you're not making a good argument, because we're all sitting here going, okay, these people who are in these buildings
Right.
will be making 3-4 trips there because, or whatever, because we do see an uptick in it. We're losing 2 liquor stores on the north end of the island, so we're shoving it all to the south end of the island. I don't necessarily, like our gut is telling us, this isn't necessarily accurate. I know you're using a book, I know this is used time and time again.
And
but-
that's why I made the statement. I don't know, I'm not a traffic expert. I don't know how to account for the fact that we're losing a liquor store on the island, so.
Again,
I know.
like, not to belabor the point as well, if you do not believe that you have sufficient information before you to make an informed recommendation, that's your prerogative. You can ask for the applicant to bring the traffic engineer, so you can ask the traffic engineer whether or not they accounted for those issues. This is your item.
Right.
And you.
So the way, and not to interrupt that thought, but our job is to hand this off to council and say, we like this, 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 and this, or we don't like it because of this, this, and this. I don't think we have enough information to vote on it, to hand it to council, because there's gonna be a stop there, because they're gonna ask for the same stuff. They all live on the island, they see, I think we can't come up with the issues. So I would rather have the ask come back to us again, so then it'll be a smooth transition to move it up to council.
Why don't we recommend that the traffic person be at the council with new information about height of season?
I'm just going to, real quick, pull.
I have a suggestion. Could we make a provision that, that we recommend it, but based on the existing traffic study, condition on the, there being evidence when it goes before the council that there's no significant difference in the traffic study between the date of the study and the high season.
Well, but it's
Is
going
it
to go,
possible to have something like that?
you don't have the time. It's going to go in front of council in November and
No.
December.
Well, yeah, well,
October. And somebody said if we
November.
approved it,
November,
go to,
December.
Right, November.
Still,
or-
again,
is
you're
it
out of
October,
season.
November? October, November, I'm sorry.
I thought council said October.
That was what was in the draft ordinance. I know they said that may be changing, so I don't have the dates. But
That's-
we would also request, if possible, if we could, if this could be recommended to council and we provide council with an updated report, if there are any differences.
so that's what
It-
I was trying to say.
Yeah, it may
But-
be insignificant from a traffic standpoint.
I'm a cynic. We're going to ask for traffic study. Traffic studies always manage to come up with whatever the applicant would like to see. All right? And this, I hate to be cynical about it, but that's not going to make a significant difference, I don't believe.
Well, I think there's several things here, Dan. I mean, it's not only the traffic, it's the other things we were talking about, too.
Park.
Having a local representative, the park, Jim asked for, hey, what do you do when you have a park this close, even though it's not in the 500 feet, it's 502 feet away? I mean, there's some things here I just don't.
On the weight of it all, if this traffic study was 20% more traffic, I mean, the question is, would you not recommend it? And that's the question is, if this is a moot point, then we're beating a dead horse right now, and maybe we just,
I just think there's three issues. There's the pharmacy, and that's not a give or take, it's be included. I mean, you've also have the traffic, which I can't see a July study what the impact is in March. And especially with the delta of our tourists go to liquor stores a whole lot more than locals. So I think there's a delta there that needs to be examined. And, quite frankly, the park is a big concern. And I'd like to see a local representative here, or an area manager that understands the island and can listen to our concerns.
Or make a motion for discussion?
for discussion.
That's what all motions are for.
what would you like your motion to be?
I'd like to recommend that we recommend approval to pass it to the town council with the following changes in the fact that we'd like to add in the permitted uses, a pharmacy be included in the existing and amended uses, and include all the previous deviations and conditions, except where modified in this report, that we would, we feel that they meet all of the conditions and findings, and that we add conditions for requesting a local representative from the store here to be present, a traffic study person who can communicate on the peak times, and to also have someone from our Parks and Rec be here to present any concerns they have.
May I ask a point of clarity?
And
I'm sorry.
also adding the deviation, oh, I said with the deviations. What else do I need to put? Is there,
The hours.
oh, well, that's
That's in the change.
approval of conditions, 1 through 13, and the deviation for the driveway, and, 45 on, same as on 54. Yeah. Deviation to permit a packaged liquor store, which is primarily engaged with retail, so I think we covered that.
A question, are the current hours of the store, are they open until 10 p.m.? Or is it 9?
Not by any ordinance that they have to close by a certain hour, I don't think.
I believe it looks
Rest of
like
being
they're
here.
open till 10 on Fridays and Saturdays.
Is that right?
That they're adding the hour from 7 to 8 because that would eliminate a lot of the big trucks coming for delivery during, regular traffic go-to-work hours, if people do come between 7 and 8. So I think that's great.
Door's not opening at 7.
I know, but that's for delivery only.
Okay. I misheard what you said.
Anybody want to second that?
Well, I'll second it for purposes of discussion, except I'm not exactly sure what I'm seconding because you have so many things in there. But if we could,
Well, I thought that would help eliminate the questions if we had people there that could either speak on behalf of the questions that we brought up or say that there are no problems with those areas. And
Can we request them to have people there? Can we?
So just,
in this?
I think for clarification, you used the word condition. I don't think you meant to use the word condition related to that. So with the suggestion that they provide, because those were your concerns, those 3 things that you mentioned, right? You don't want us to draft a condition that they have to be there. That was not going to be added on to 13, go on, this becomes number 14. Your point was, right, just for the, because you used the word condition, I just want to make sure.
Okay.
So the traffic, the local representative, and the Park and Rec are not conditions of approval, they're
request to be
substantial
present
recommendations that they provide those because those were part of your concerns.
to speak on the application. I think it's important because they're not going to redo the study to come back to the council in November. So I think it's important to have the person there so that the questions can be asked directly from the person who wrote the report. And, our concerns for Park and Rec is there a problem now, and is this going to make it greater, and how will they handle that, because it's their staff that they will have to provide. And, requesting the pharmacy is just a dream cloud, but we'd like to put it out there.
I don't know, that's up for them to bring these people here and the town council to ask some of the same questions.
Yeah.
Move them to bring them here so that when town council asks the same questions, they have somebody to answer them, but I don't know, you can.
We will request that Publix have somebody with knowledge of the liquor store and the area be present at the next hearing. And again, I will I will discuss with the traffic engineer when I leave here. I can see if he can prepare a new report or any, update to this if there is any, with your concerns about the peak season.
I think we've beaten this thing and given town council lots and lots of ideas and questions and concerns, and it's up to, at this point, for them to solve them between now and then, and for town council to decide if they want to approve this. We have done our job.
Well, if they don't bring the information to answer the questions at the town council level, the town council can send it back to us,
Or
which
the
is,
town council can just say no, too.
right.
And so it's
Or approve
worth
it.
their while to have these people in that meeting. It's not necessarily, I think, a ability to put a condition on that. I think that they know, Scott, I think town council has heard our concerns and knows our concerns. And I do believe that they listen to us and will ask many of the same questions, and it's up to them to solve this problem and have it solved by the time it shows up in front of town council.
Hopefully they'll
Or
have a
else
copy
town
of our
council can
minutes.
send it back, or they can turn it down, and that's two things that I don't think Publix really wants. So I don't know delaying this is going to change much.
Fair enough.
You can please
No.
disagree with me if you think I'm wrong on this, but that's where I am on it.
Well, that's why I think it would be important to request that those people be here to answer the questions, and then if they don't feel that they've gotten adequate answers, they can either resend it back to us and more information.
Hope in the meantime, Publix solves these issues that we have brought into light and to town council. So you second the motion?
I second it, but I would like it re-articulated, if I may.
Okay, so you don't want it to have do you want to define that again, or do you want me to restate it?
As I understand it, it's a determination by the LPA that the conditions for approval have been met, subject to I don't even want to say it's a condition, but they're all recommendations. Recommendation number one, substantive, that you can make is adding pharmacy use to the list of permitted uses, and then that the applicant bring a local rep, an updated traffic study if appropriate, with the appropriate professional to answer questions, and a town employee from the Parks Department to address the Newton Park matter.
Safety committee?
I don't know where it would go, safety committee or parks or whom? That would be up to them.
I'll contact the director and leave that up to them, who's appropriate.
And again, if they don't answer them, then there's a good chance they won't get approval. I don't know. It's at this point, we've asked the questions. We have, voiced our concerns on this, but I do think we do want to see something there. I don't think that we're against this as much as we have concerns.
Correct.
So with that, we've got a motion, we've seconded it. Are you?
Discussion.
Before we take a vote, Madam Chair, I just want to say a couple of things. Number one, I lean strongly towards continuance, but in the interest of comity, I'm willing to support the motion, but I would say that's dependent, it's contingent on two things. Number one, I'm comforted by the fact that one of our counselors is here and is hearing this whole conversation. That gives me great comfort. And second of all, again, I just want to reiterate how disappointed I am that no one from Publix corporate is here. It's the outside counsel has done an admirable job today. I don't mean to take anything away from you, but this is a significant ask for a corporation, and it's troubling that no one is here, a decision maker is here from the company itself. I've never quite seen anything like that for something this substantive. So that being said, I want council to go back and let your client know that we want Publix to be successful on this island. We're not trying to make your life difficult, but it would be more comforting to have somebody here to hear these concerns and try to address them, particularly before they go before council. So thank you.
This is for our attorney.
Okay.
That's twice we've heard potential of wanting to continue. Can we do a motion on that? And
No, well, there's
if that's denied, then move forward and motion to approve?
There's a motion and a second, so that's
move
what's on the
forward.
table, so it would be appropriate to vote for that. If it doesn't get approved, then another motion would be appropriate. And if that's to continue, then that's something you can consider.
Are you satisfied with the restatement of?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay.
Nay.
Passes to continue to 5-1 for town council approval. Thank you all. That closes our public hearings, and we'll open our administrative agenda. Does anybody need a break? Want to take a 5-minute break? We'll take a 10-minute break and adjourn at 10:35. Reconvene at 10:35. there's mostly, there's not a whole lot in there.
31 people.
Mostly this. And when you read it, you go, are you that? All righty, 10:37. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And we're going to start with our administrative agenda. I'm just going to ask first, Scott, do we have anything from the Historic Preservation Board?
No, but we have a meeting next Tuesday at 9 a.m., and I believe we have a quorum.
Okay. And you were off last month, so you don't have anything to report?
That is correct.
Do I have to do a
We
motion
have the
not to meet?
agenda.
It will be in Patty's hands about 2 o'clock.
All right, we'll post that as soon as we get it, so it's available to the public.
Yep.
Moving along, LPA member items, reports. I'm going to start with Dan.
I have nothing to report.
Lori?
Going back to the joint, or should you want me to wait?
No, you could.
Okay,
just
when we were
your time.
talking about the small lots and whether or not they're buildable. And one person that I know on Island came up to me and said, I have a really small lot, and in the paper it said, if my house gets destroyed, I won't be able to rebuild. And I said, whoa.
That's not what we
And
did.
That's not it. So I just, was able to explain to her, and I hope that nobody else has that total misunderstanding. That's it.
All right, Scott?
The only thing, I'm not going to be available the November meeting if it's the date that is scheduled. So I'd like to ask for an
What
excuse.
date is that?
November 12th would be the normal, regular scheduled.
Yeah, I will not be in town.
Okay. Jane?
I'd just like to say, I just came back from a 5-day wedding vacation in Ithaca, New York, and I totally 100% appreciate our new paved roads. I cannot believe the amount of potholes and patches and bumps. It feels like the reconstruction interphase that we go through when they patch up a road and before they do the final paving, but I totally appreciate our new roads here.
How was Ithaca?
It was beautiful. It was scheduled to rain every single day, and it didn't. But it was cold.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Except
one
for
of-
Cayuga's water, so.
Yeah, I didn't get in those.
Our next
Scott?
meeting is October 15th, is that
Well,
correct?
that's what I was going to just start working on.
So you want to get into that then? Are we-
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to put that on my set.
So we've discussed a couple different dates. John's availability is actually the 16th. And I know we had some discussions, some members I thought were going to miss on the 15th if available.
I will not be available on the 15th.
Okay, so then to that point, and I also want to try not to bump the same committee. We do that a couple times, and unfortunately. So if the 16th is available, then if it's not for everybody, then we'll just have to figure out a way to make the 8th work, I guess. But the 16th is the other option, which is a Wednesday.
Who's available on 16th?
Fine.
Jane?
I have a scheduled conflict at
This
this time, but I
October
will
we're
try.
talking about now?
Yes, sir.
I have a conflict, and I will try to adjust that.
It's possible?
That's a Monday, isn't it?
No, it's
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
A what?
Wednesday.
Oh. It was going to be the 15th, right?
We talked about the 15th. There's been multiple conflicts with that,
And
yes.
you want to move it
Next day. to
just the
16th.
next day? Yeah, well, I was leaving town that day, but I can leave another day later.
I'm available.
I plan, yeah.
Available?
So then,
So it could be, if Tim's available, and Dan, if you can't, you can't. I mean, but that is 6 members and the town attorney and Jason, so, I mean,
and I want to confuse the issue more by saying I would like this time to avoid the other bumping. There's a committee every day of the week. So if we could do it a little bit later start to allow them to finish
Okay.
their meeting. So like at 10 or 10:15, 10:30, something like that.
later in the morning,
Great for
10:30?
me.
Okay with me.
Work
yeah.
for everyone?
10:30 on the 16th would be great.
Okay.
I think an hour and a half for the Anchorage Committee, hopefully that gives them enough.
Okay, so again.
Do you have any, oh, go ahead, sorry. Do you have any idea what you're putting on? Is this going to be a long meeting, a short, don't know what's going to be on it? Kind of working on something?
There's Probably 2 items, and one of them probably will be long, but
The boardwalk thing is up.
that is, we're trying to schedule that for that date, yes.
Yeah.
That has not been finalized, but that is the
Yeah.
proposed scheduled date, yes. And part of this was getting them a final date to make sure of availability, which I think they will be.
The other thing I have in mind, next town council meeting is what date? I don't have it on my
Well,
calendar.
next Monday, but you mean, when will these go before?
Well, no, I'm asking when next town council meeting, do we have anything in front of them? I don't think we do.
I don't believe we do.
Okay,
I don't,
okay. Then town, when do you believe that this stuff will be going, the stuff that we talked about today will be going, the items today?
the variance will probably, Sarah's not here, but I think it could be ready for the 7th, October 7th. And then in speaking with Publix, it's more likely the 21st, but that's not a set date either. I'll let you know about that at your next meeting. But the
Okay.
7th, I think the variance is probably, can be scheduled for.
I cannot make the 7th. I'll be flying back into town. Can anyone else?
can.
Okay, so Lori will be at the 7th. And right now, I'm open for the 21st. And we'll have a meeting between then and to decide who. Okay. I don't have anything other than our housekeeping. Appreciate everyone's time, comments, and efforts and energies. So the LPA attorney items. Nothing? Jason, you're up for community.
Yeah, I have a special guest that would like to start a conversation. I just thought it was easier than under public comment since
Okay.
it's not normal public.
I'm going to stand over here so I can see Jason and John.
Okay. See my face?
Do you want to go first, Jason, or do you want
Go
me
ahead.
to talk?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm here because I am asking the LPA to take on a subject matter. And it's not just me that's asking. I brought it up at town council several meetings ago, and the town council decided, rather than them talking about it, they were going to punt it to you. So I'm here to, and I've discussed this with Jason. And it was interesting that I was here to hear all of your discussion about uses and the fact that we had a case involving a Lee County use still being designated for people. To get to the specific topic that brought me to start investigating zoning and uses, I regularly attend the meetings of the Beach Ministerial Association. And the pastors have become aware that the churches are all zoned industrial. Institutional. Institutional.
Yes.
I knew it
Close.
started with an I. Institutional. Institutional is the word. But within that zoning category, they have 2 uses. One of them is worship center, and the other is religious activities. And that may have worked years ago when uses were designed and written up. However, churches don't function the way they used to. Worship center means that the building that's on that lot can only be used for worship services, which means basically they use it 1 day a week. And then you'll notice that most of the churches on the island have a sanctuary, and then they have like a recreation hall or a public area that they use for dinners and things like that. So the churches are concerned because they are now using all of their property. It seems wasteful that they just have a sanctuary that's used on Sundays. So they conduct all kinds of activities in the sanctuaries now. In fact, I know at least 2 of the churches no longer have pews. They have chairs that can be moved around, and things are happening in the sanctuaries. So having that worship center designation to me and to them doesn't make any sense. It would seem to make sense to me that if you've got a church, that entire zoned area is now religious activities because they conduct religious activities all over their properties. So I started having discussions about this with Jason and with Roger, and we respectfully disagreed with each other. They didn't think that that the worship center designation should be deleted, and I still am unconvinced by the arguments that I hear about that. And then that's led to an even larger discussion Because as I've taught myself more about zoning and uses, I've learned there's all kinds of issues that lead me to believe that we need to kind of update our thinking and a lot of what's going on. I talk to people all over the island with properties that are still under Lee County zoning. We haven't designated everybody appropriately for our town code. So there's kind of two discussions that I'd like the LPA to engage in. One specifically is, should we get rid of the use designated as worship center and say everything that happens on church property is a religious activity? Or modify it in some way that it makes sense for today's churches. And then the other thing is, do we need to have a comprehensive look at the island where we now designate the zoning not using Lee County anymore? We're not Lee County anymore. We have our own zoning and uses, but people are still designated under those old things. So did I explain it, Jason?
Yeah, I don't think we disagree
Sure.
necessarily. It's just a discussion point, and I have some background and history with some religious land use issues related to expanding uses. Are they really under, so it's a fine line, right? We've got this other thing hanging out there, federal law and all that, but I think it's a worthy conversation to talk about what triggers a special exception, what doesn't. Are there things that could be mitigated? Can we control lighting and noise through other means? That's really what the special exception is intended for. But again, we're wanting to have this conversation, and that's what she's before you, to ask you to put it on your plate, to work with us and start that process.
And I can't be here in October, so I'm asking you to not put it on in that time. But I wanted to come here before you actually put it on the agenda, so I kind of talk to you about it, and you can be rolling this over in the back of your mind and maybe do a little reading on it. Jason may have some things to point you toward.
Would this be better handled in a joint session with town council too? I mean, this is not a small
They
endeavor.
punted
They're
it to
punting
you.
us, so it's ours.
Yes, they punted it to
Okay.
you, and I think the feeling was that if you all felt that this was something that didn't deserve any further consideration, then they didn't want to look at it. But if you all felt that it deserved further consideration, then they would.
So my thought is I think we had a workshop last year.
Yeah.
I can't remember when it was. It was pre-joint meetings, and I believe most of the stuff that you've evolved into the joint meeting process came out of that. That's probably something that we're due for again at some point, for you to have a workshop with us. So that's an open conversation about some of these specific issues. And then again, how they apply across the board. So that might be something that we look at later in the year, beginning of the next year. I know there's somewhat of a timeline. I don't think with the specific issue we're talking about there's as big of a timeline, because we can handle that hopefully some way else.
So it just came up out of something else that's
As
reared
most
its head.
things do, specific examples generate conversation and curiosity and record searching and all that. So I don't know if we've solved the issue. We're working through it. Sarah nodding to me. But to that point, I think it brought up the question of how do we want to deal with this type of use? And it's easier to discuss these types of situations than, in my opinion, to do it like this when they're important to people than to blanket when we go back and rewrite the schedule of uses and the zoning districts and you write all the uses in there. Sometimes those things get lost in there. So it's probably an important conversation to have.
I'm a little concerned about opening up the door on religious activities in worship centers, only because we all have differing opinion of what that definition is.
And I'm not saying that the only solution is to delete the category, but maybe have a different category. We just need to look at it differently, because as it is now, you're limiting people to basically using an entire building one day a week. And the
we
value of
really?
property
'Cause, I
on this island.
Are we really? Because, I mean, there's activities going on in these buildings all the time.
Right.
Have we run into an issue
They've been
there?
going on, but when is the town going to clamp down on them? Which is why the ministers wanted me to bring this forward before it became an issue, because they're afraid that they are going to be clamped down on.
It is a unique, I don't want to say unique, it says worship center and anything else is a special exception. So it's
Very
Wouldn't it fall
confining.
under religious activities to be held on that? Because you're saying all of it's religious activities.
No, that's the other use. There are only two uses for the churches. So-
right. I think the discussion really is, on one hand, you have keep it the way it is. The other hand, you have do whatever you want under the umbrella of a religious institution. There's probably a middle ground,
Yeah.
or no ground, I don't know. So that's the conversation, I think.
So this has to do with issues that we've seen in the newspaper as of late, potentially? Because I think it's.
Let me jump on this right away.
Yeah, let me just say, I think it's a really good discussion. I'm glad you brought it forward, because I think
Yeah.
it's a legitimate concern. Yep.
It did come to light because of one particular church's problem. This will not solve their problem. So I don't want you to
Baptist,
think
what
I'm
is it?
here trying to solve their problem. But after it came to light that it was part of their problem, the other pastors then all became concerned, and when they were looking into it, said, hey, if somebody complains about me, then they'll start shutting down things that happen on this parcel of land.
Oh, I think it's a fair point. Yeah, thank you.
So they're trying
Right.
to avoid a problem in advance.
Roxanne,
Well, we have.
could I ask what's the status of that? The reference to other churches, of course, the Baptist church, and there's a pending, not litigation, but with what's the status of that, and what bearing?
They
does
are
that-
making progress, but I really don't want to comment about it publicly.
Okay, but
It's a very complicated situation with lots of layers and more than one problem.
That's
Yes,
accurate.
and I appreciate that. Might have some bearing, though, for us to, be aware of those issues
I just hate
if
trying
we're
to
going to be
fix,
dealing with this. The other thing is,
I hate fixing
there's all
glitches
sorts of-
and not
there's-
knowing what the glitch is. Fixing a glitch and not knowing what the glitch is, and then we dig
Yeah.
ourselves deeper in a hole.
well, there's no question that there's activities on these sites that don't fall within either the definition of worship or religious activity. I don't know how a farmer's market is a religious activity, but there's also the issue, there's a very broad issue here too. Council might want to comment on that, and that's a constitutional issue of church versus state issue that became involved at one point on the role of a government to control this even.
And I'm not here to start discussing it yet. I'm just here to let you know that council did send it to you, and I would like to take part in that discussion with you if I can, and I haven't made up my mind. I'm learning things from Jason all the time, but if I could be helpful, I'd like to be, and
So you want to handle this with a workshop?
I think it's a good subject to be on a workshop, not to give us more work, but I figured at some point you'd ask us for a workshop. So if we're going to do this, I think that keeps it moving. So I don't know the timeline on this, December, something like that, maybe. Have a workshop during, have our meeting and then maybe go into a workshop. So we'll talk to you about your schedules.
Would we have all of the existing uses of all of the churches before we had this meeting so that we know what they are doing?
I would probably start with 30,000 foot view of this and really give you the definitions, the two different definitions and how that they're listed in the land development code as far as uses, one being a permitted use, one being a special exception use. There's probably some religious institutions that don't have the institutional zoning district. I can't speak to that. We haven't done that research. And a lot of these approvals were either pre-Lee County maybe, or they were resolutions by Lee County. There's a lot of older stuff out there. So it's a multifaceted question. So
I think in asking for what the existing uses are, we then will understand what issues might be with those, and that we're not trying to eliminate something that is benefiting the community at this point if we don't know what they are.
So I think it'll be in my mind, it'll be a conversation about what uses are acceptable, even if they're not directly related to a core function of religious activity, I guess, right? Not to define that, but a lot of religious institutions provide basketball leagues for youth or for adults. Childcare. They've welcome other people from other places in to stay at their facility. I mean, there's a lot it's basically any other use that someone would do. How many of those are acceptable as part of this kind of semi-public cultural facility type situation?
Are other communities looking at their verbiage as well, that you know?
Not that I'm aware
Other
of.
communities?
Yes.
I have done that in several communities, and we're always trying to find that balance. I think what you referenced earlier is like the Religious Land Use Institutionalized Persons Act. That was federal law, I think under Bush 1 or something. That basically you can't treat religious facilities different than you would treat a what are they called? Basically the AMVETs, not AMVETs. What am I thinking? Basically,
Or charitable?
no, I mean facilities that are, the Sisters of Foreign Wars or whatever they're called. I'm losing what the name of it is. What is the name of it?
VFW?
VFWs, things of that nature that are kind of semi-public, public or private facilities. They have to all be treated the same. You can't say religious institutions have to have a higher standard of approval than those do. So that's an example. Our code, I think, is pretty good on that. But there's a lot of different issues that it's been years since I've looked at it. But yeah, communities are always trying to figure out that balance because of those other uses, the basketball leagues and the daycares and that sort of thing, which are pretty, I would say daycare is a pretty standard, in my experience, use related to religious facilities, but is basketball leagues, is RV parking, is, all these other things, is that.
So on top of the worshiping, the institution designation, we're also going to look at other uses. Are you feeling like our code is that we still have too much Lee County in there?
I don't know that our code is lacking, but it appears that
Not lacking, but
because our town is so young, we've never updated everything. My understanding is that people come in and say, what are my uses? And they're still categorized under the Lee County uses. And that's a discussion to have. Is it important that we go through the entire town and everybody that's not a resident, I think the residences are pretty clear, but everything that's not a residence, do we need to, what do you call when you morph somebody into a new code?
modify
Yeah,
into our code?
modify is not really what,
Yeah,
but
there's some terminology that's outdated.
redesignate them properly under our code, because it's never been done. And is it important that we do that? Maybe, I don't know.
I'd clear things up more. Specifically when you look at the liquor store thing today, those 5 uses, really, we had to ask what they were because they're not ours. Kind of had an idea.
And just to give you an example, the Women's Club is another situation where they're unsure what they're allowed to do with that property, and it's really important that they do something with it, and that we've got people willing to work on that, and we don't want to stymie the energy and all that's going into that. We want to assist them with that and make it work. So that's another example outside of the churches of, do our uses fit? And
so just to tie this up, I don't think we're going to actively go in and change their resolutions or anything like that.
No.
This is the process. Publix is a perfect example of a time to update and modify those approval documents. I think what we're talking about is looking at customary uses, figuring that out, better defining what is normal. If you have certain uses across the island that consistently were worded a certain way, but under today's code, maybe it's not clear because the terminology is different, this is the time to clarify that. And this is one of those uses and examples to do that.
So a working session sometime December. Sound good for everyone? Head nods, yeses?
Sure.
Okay.
thank you.
All right, so let's get it on our agenda in December.
Thank you.
Anything else you have?
I don't think so, no.
Any items for next month's agenda?
Just what we talked about before. We're working towards the agenda to see what fits for everybody. So thank you for your moving of the dates. It helps us.
No
Keep
problem.
some sanity.
Any public comment? It's an empty room. All right, so let's close it, adjourn it. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Did you state your name for the record?
Oh.